If you're thinking of traveling solo for the first time, I am so excited for you. You probably have a ton of questions and maybe even a few fears. As someone who has gone on countless solo travel trips, I am here to help. In this video, I've put together some of my best solo travel advice from my solo travel videos. I'll be sharing tips like what to research for your first solo trip, solo travel safety tips, and a few solo travel essentials that you can buy before your first solo trip. Welcome to the ultimate guide to solo travel for beginners. Listen, this is a meaty video with a ton of information, so make sure you use the timestamps below to find exactly what you're looking for. Let's get started. If you're brand new to traveling alone and it's just an idea right now and you're not really sure how to get started, here are a couple of tips that can get you started. Start small. If you have not spent a lot of time by yourself and you've never solo traveled before, I would highly encourage starting small. It could be anything from going to a museum in your hometown by yourself, taking yourself out to lunch or dinner, learn what it feels like to be by yourself and start doing things by yourself. Don't dive right into it. Start with baby steps. Second tip would be take a solo trip within your home city or home state, your home province. You can take an overnight trip in the next town over. The options and the opportunities are endless. And you know what? If there's a place nearby that you've always wanted to go to, now is the time. So staying within your hometown allows you to kind of practice solo traveling while still maintaining some level of familiarity. Think positive. Whatever you water will grow. So I encourage you to water the seed and the plant of positivity and watch that grow. The thing is, no matter what you do, there are always going to be people there to discourage you, or there are always going to be people that are not going to understand. Now that you've seen some simple ways to get started with solo travel and some things that you need to be aware of, I want to share with you some solo travel trip ideas. This is piggybacking off of some of the simple ways to get started, but taking it a step further. These are some trips that you can consider for your first solo travel trip. If you love running races, if you love marathons, Ironmans, things like that, and the first idea is to build a trip around running a race. I mean, if you love running on your own and this is something that you love to do as a hobby, then you might enjoy incorporating that into your travels. I know that I cannot take credit for this, but I have a friend of mine who is an avid runner and she does this all the time. And I've really watched her take these epic solo travel trips all around running races. She'll pick a city that she wants to explore, sign up for a race there, and she'll make a whole trip around it. The next trip idea is to travel for food. It's really easy to eat a dish and not know anything about it, not know its history or the cultural relevance to it, where it comes from, how it originated. Food and drink are so closely tied to culture that it's a really good entry point into understanding another culture. If there is a particular cuisine that you love or that you're interested in, you can take food tours, you can do a cooking class, you can even create your own food tour. I mean, I did something a little similar to this, not exactly like this, but I did this when I was in Tucson. I had wanted to go to Tucson for ages, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to go was because I heard so much about the food. The first day I was there, I created my own little mini taco tour, which I'll link down below. That was fun. And while yes, I didn't go there solely for the food, it was a big factor into why I wanted to travel to Tucson. Travel solo to learn a language. If you don't know much about me or my story, this is pretty much my life. Studying Spanish actually led me to solo traveling because one of the most pivotal moments in my life was when I was kind of stuck in a rut with Spanish and I was in college and I decided, you know what? I am going to find a random language school in Spain and I'm going to go there for 2 to 3 months and just soak it up. And that is exactly what I did. And that was my very first solo trip. So all that just to say, it does take a bit of planning and sometimes a lot of money. But if you can get that together, it is an excellent idea for a solo trip, and you can make it as long or as short as you want. And there are so many short-term and long-term language academies and language schools out there. In a few places will give you a visa to come there and study. So if you are learning a new language and want to solo travel, definitely consider putting those two together and taking it on a solo trip. Another solo travel trip idea is to go on a wellness or spiritual retreat. Sometimes we just need to get away, like far away. Taking a wellness retreat or whatever it is that makes you feel grounded and connected, it's a really good idea to build a solo trip around that. And it's a really great way to take your first solo adventure, connect with yourself, and at the very least, just disconnect from the world and just spend some good time in solitude, relaxing and rejuvenating. Hopefully by now you have some solid ideas for a solo trip and maybe even an exact destination in mind. Awesome. Now let's talk about actually planning your trip. If you're looking for a blueprint on how to plan a solo trip, you can steal mine. In this video right here, I talk you through how I normally plan a solo trip from start to finish, so feel free to check it out. Now, in my opinion, the most important thing for actually planning a trip is research. Doing adequate research will keep you safe, so you're not walking into a destination totally blind. And remember, when you're traveling alone, it's all you, so you have to be prepared. So I want to share with you 4 crucial things that I make sure to research before my solo trips. This first thing applies to traveling internationally. If you are traveling internationally, you want to make sure you are researching visa requirements and information. Depending on which country you're a citizen of and which country you're going to, the visa requirements are going to vary. For some destinations, you might need a visa, but for other destinations, you might not. So for example, if you are a US citizen, you can travel to Mexico for up to 160 days without a visa. However, if you go somewhere like Brazil, for example, they just reinstated their visa requirements for US nationals. You will need a visa to enter the country. Aside from knowing if you need a visa or not, you also want to make sure if you do, you know which visa you need, what the process is like, whether there are options for an e-visa, how much it costs, and how long the visa is valid for. Another thing you can research when you're planning your solo trip are the neighborhoods in your destination. This will help you start to get a picture and a layout of the city that you're traveling to, and it will also help you plan other parts of your trip. For example, accommodation. As you're researching the different neighborhoods in your destination, start to get an idea of where you might want to book your accommodation, and then also areas that you might want to avoid. And by researching the different neighborhoods, you'll also get to see where the attractions are. Are they all clustered in one part of the city, or are they spread out throughout the entire city? If you're taking public transportation, you can see where the metro and train stops are, which ones you might want to be close to, and also what the walking distance might be between one neighborhood and another. I like to use a couple of different resources to help me gain an understanding of the neighborhoods in the city that I'm looking at. So for example, I like to use Google Street Maps. I zoom in, I scroll around, I scroll down the streets to kind of give myself an idea of what that neighborhood looks like. I use Instagram, TikTok, and other forms of social media to find local stores and shops in some of the neighborhoods I've researched to try to get a little bit more of an idea of what that neighborhood might be like. Almost every city has a common crime or common scams that the locals know about, and you want to make sure that you know about these scams as well. These crimes and scams can vary from petty crimes like pickpocketing to more major serious crime. Either way, you'll want to make sure you're researching the common crimes, scams, and traps in your destination. Additionally, I also try to see if I can find out if there are any common crimes that are targeted specifically towards women and specifically towards travelers and tourists. There's also usually a lot of crime that can happen at airports as well. So sometimes I like to research not only the crimes that are common in that city, but also that are common at the airport as well. You just want to do what you can to make sure that you're aware so that you know what to look out for and you can try to keep yourself safe. I like to also figure out if I'm flying, especially if I'm flying internationally, how do I get from the airport to the city center or to my hotel or my accommodation? Once you have started that research on the public transportation and on transportation in your city, then you will probably inevitably find how to get from the airport to the city center. But I try not to just assume that I can grab a cab or an Uber and get into the city. Some cities actually offer free shuttles from the airport to the city center, or for very cheap. And also some hotels offer free shuttles as long as you book in advance, or they have shuttles that run, I don't know, every hour, every 30 minutes. To and from the airport. But I've also found that there are a lot of cities that tend to mark up their Uber or their cab services from the city center to the airport. And if you don't know this, or you don't know that there's an alternative way to get from the airport to the city center that might be significantly cheaper, you might end up spending a lot more money than you intended. And also sometimes it's just nice to know what your options are. I know for me, I feel a lot more comfortable having a plan instead of just landing in my destination and then Now what? Now I want to talk about something that is of the utmost importance to all solo travelers, and that is safety. This is the number one thing that I think holds a lot of people back from taking that solo travel leap. Here are some solo travel safety tips that I've learned throughout my travels that have kept me safe. Have you ever had a crush or someone new that you're dating and you kind of do a little Facebook stalking, a little Instagram deep dive, a little look on that LinkedIn? That's what you want to do with your destination. Is there public transportation? What are the cultural norms? These are all things that you want to know ahead of time, because the more you know these things and the more you know about your destination before you're actually there, that's going to set you up for success. And that's going to ease your anxiety a little bit, because you're going to feel a little bit more prepared, especially if you've never been there before and if you're alone for the first time. A good way to research is to reach out to your community, find out if anyone you know has been to that destination. I personally love Facebook groups. I am on a ton of travel Facebook groups, solo travel Facebook group, and those are really good places to get a little bit more background on the place that you're going. Read forums, Reddit's also a really good source. I like to say that research is kind of like your foundation, and then you're building upon that. So when you're traveling alone, it's really important that you let at least one or two people know where you're gonna be. So I usually share my information with about 3 or 4 people, usually my parents, my brother, and a couple of friends, and I let them know my movements. Another thing that I like to do is to communicate with my friends and family throughout my trip. So a really good way to do this is WhatsApp. I have a few WhatsApp groups, and it's great because it's international and it's free. I love to video chat and call my friends and family from WhatsApp. I send them photos. So communicating with your friends and family is super important, especially when you're traveling alone. You're gonna wanna plan your arrival and departure time wisely. You should know the main operating hours of your destination. Plan your arrival and departure within those hours. So I would advise, when you're traveling alone for the first time, especially if you're worried and you have a lot of anxiety, I would avoid planning coming in or leaving your destination really early or really late at night when there's not a lot of sun out. There are a few cities in the world that kind of shut down in the middle of the day between 2 and 4 or 3 and 5. Every destination is different. You know yourself better than anybody else. If something feels sketchy or off, it's probably because it is. Get out of there as fast as you can. As women, we're socialized to be nice and polite, don't make a fuss, don't cause a scene. Forget all that. Seriously, use those innate skills that you have. Do not compromise your safety to save a little bit of money, to be strong. Trust your gut, trust your instinct. You know yourself. Get out of there if you feel weird or sketchy, and know your limits. Self-awareness is a beautiful thing. If you know that 2 drinks is enough for you, only have 2 drinks. If you're looking for even more solo travel safety tips, I have a whole ebook that is totally free. You can grab that in the pinned comment of this video or down in the description box. Okay, so far we've covered how to get out there and get started, some solo trip ideas to consider, things to research before your solo trip, and some key solo travel safety tips. Now I want to stay on the topic of solo travel safety just a little bit longer and expand on it a little bit more, because I know it's something that's probably really important for you, and I just want you to be as prepared for your solo travel trip as you could possibly be. In order to do that, I'm going to share with you some solo travel mistakes that I certainly made when I was a new solo traveler, and I want you to learn from my mistakes. First mistake is geotagging your location and posting on social media in real time. I know we all want to get those beautiful travel pics, and we want to update our family and friends of where we're going through photos and videos, which is all good and fine, but you don't want to do this in real time. You never know who's watching, and you don't want people to know where you are, even if you don't have a large following and your account is private. And I know this might seem far-fetched and the chances of this happening are pretty low, but when you're traveling alone, safety is your top priority, and you really don't want to just put where you are and where you're located just out there for anyone to see. You want to make sure that if you are posting on social media and you are tagging your location, that you're doing it a couple days after you've been to that place, or even after your trip is done, or you moved on to a new city entirely. The next solo travel mistake is not keeping track of your stuff. I had to learn this one the hard way, and I was this close to losing my Mac laptop. So I'll tell you what happened. I was in London at London Heathrow Airport. I was leaving the city, and I had a lot of stuff in my hand and I was in a rush, which is no excuse to not keep track of your belongings. I had so many things. I had duty-free bags, I had my laptop, my luggage, I had a heavy coat in my hand because this was winter. But I remember being in a rush. I was so incredibly hungry and I didn't have any snacks with me. And I stopped at one of those kiosks to get something to eat. I had just left security. And when I was at the kiosk paying for my sandwich or snack or whatever it was that I got, I must have put my laptop down, and then once I paid, I just walked away. I was, over by my gate, sitting there, and then that's when I was making sure I had all of my stuff and realized I didn't have my laptop. I ran back to the kiosk, fully out of breath, and thank God it hadn't been that much time since I noticed, and the sweet, sweet girl that was working behind the kiosk just lifted my laptop and was like, forgetting something? I was so close to losing my laptop, which had everything on there. You definitely want to make sure that no matter how many things you have, no matter how hungry you are, no matter if you're in a rush, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all of your belongings, because again, you're by yourself. There's no one there to watch your stuff. There's no one there to make sure you've done a checklist and you've got your phone, your keys, your wallet, all that stuff. You want to make sure you're doing that for yourself, and you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all of your belongings. The next solo travel mistake is not trusting your gut. Women and men, but women, we have got that female intuition. We know what's up, and we know when we get that feeling that something isn't right, you gotta go with that. I feel like sometimes as women, we can be socialized to be overly polite, to be over accommodating, to kind of stuff that feeling down and just go with whatever is around us. If you have that feeling inside that something isn't right, get out of there. No matter where you are, no matter who you're with, try to get out of there as fast as you can. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to be polite. You don't even have to explain yourself. And I also want to note that this isn't just for when you're traveling. This is also for when you're planning an accommodation, for example, right? And I'll give you an example. I am going on a solo trip in a couple of months, and I was planning everything out, trying to figure out where I was going to stay. I wanted to stay in a hotel, and I was having a little trouble with some of the hotels that I was looking at because they were all very expensive. I just wasn't expecting the hotel prices to be that expensive. And so I looked into Airbnb, which is something I travel with a lot. I had ended up picking this Airbnb simply because it was cheaper, and I booked it. But as the days passed, I just kept thinking, and even as I was looking at that Airbnb initially, I just kept thinking, something doesn't feel right. I can't pinpoint what it is, but something about this Airbnb just doesn't feel right. And so after a few days, I ended up canceling it and just booking with a hotel, even though it was more expensive. So sometimes, especially when you're frugal, I'm a frugal person, so you want to try to be mindful of your money. I totally get that because I'm the same way, but you don't want to cut corners and go for something that's cheaper just because it's cheaper. When you have that intuition and that feeling that something isn't right, then go with the more expensive option, because that's just going to make you feel better. It's going to help you sleep at night, and something that could potentially be keeping you very safe. Now, I have no idea why I felt that way about that Airbnb, and it could have been totally fine, and I'll never know because I canceled that booking. I had to go with my intuition. As you can see, I am big on trusting your gut. Most of the time, your intuition will never steer you wrong. Something that you'll hear a lot of seasoned solo travelers advise is don't tell anyone you're traveling alone. Now, I fully stand by that, but I also want to share with you how I approach this question and what you can say instead. So firstly, the most important thing I think is that I tend to approach these situations individually, because a lot of what I will say back to that person depends on the situation, the context, where I am, also what kind of mood I'm in. But the most important thing that I can drive home is something that I have said in multiple videos, and that is to trust your gut. Trust your gut and let that be your guide, because at the end of the day, this might sound harsh, but you don't owe anyone anything, and it's important to remember that. So if someone is asking you that and it's making you uncomfortable, just know in the back of your mind, you don't have to explain your choices or how you like to travel to anybody, and they don't deserve an explanation from you. So I just wanted to address that and get that out the way first and foremost. And then another thing I just wanted to quickly address is also sometimes in the moment, I try to just quickly analyze or figure out the motive behind why someone is asking me that. Because if I can quickly kind of analyze why someone is asking me that, I can move forward from there. So for example, there's a very big difference between if someone is asking me that because they're just genuinely curious, or because they're also traveling alone and they want someone to explore the city with, or they're asking me that because they're low-key trying to shame me or trying to figure out something. And all of that is going to define how I move forward and how I answer that question, if I even answer it at all. Okay, so keeping that in mind, every situation is going to be completely different. If I don't feel like I'm in danger, I don't feel my spirit isn't in some sort of check, then we'll usually proceed in one of three ways: tell the truth, make something up, or flip it. So let's get into each one of these things. So starting with the first one, tell the truth. In certain situations, if I'm traveling alone and someone asks me, hey, are you traveling alone? Are you by yourself? Whatever. I tell the truth. This usually happens because there are some situations where the jig is up. It's very obvious and clear that I'm traveling solo, and I can't really hide the fact that I'm traveling solo, at least not in that moment. And I'm okay with being honest about it, especially if someone is asking me that and I don't feel uncomfortable, I don't feel like I'm in danger, and I think it's okay to just tell the truth. For example, there have been many times where I have been traveling solo and say I am in a shared accommodation, like an Airbnb or a hostel, and either I'm staying in a room where there are other rooms with other travelers, or I'm staying in a hostel and maybe I'm in a shared room and I just have a bed and there's a few other travelers there. For example, a few years ago, I was traveling solo in London and I stayed at this really nice Airbnb, and there was a room across the hall that was vacant. They were also renting out to travelers, and this guy came, I think the day after I did. He was from Tennessee. He was also traveling alone, and he asked me if I was traveling solo. I told him I was, and we ended up spending the whole day together. We went everywhere. We ate dinner, lunch together. It was so fun. I had such a great time with him. It wasn't creepy, and I didn't feel awkward. I didn't feel weird. I didn't feel in danger at any point. I felt fine. That's a situation, for example, where I'm honest about traveling alone, because it was obvious that he was traveling alone. It was obvious that I was traveling alone, and he was asking me that because he wanted someone to hang out with, and we ended up hanging out the whole day in London, and we had a great time. With that being said, though, I do want to say that although in these particular situations you are being honest, you still want to have your guard up and be aware of your surroundings, and also aware of what you're disclosing, how much, and also how you're feeling. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and you're talking to them and everything seems fine, and then all of a sudden something shifts? Maybe they say something or they do something and you're like, all of a sudden now I'm not feeling so great about this person or this conversation. I'm sure everyone has had those experiences. So these things can happen, right? So although you are being honest, you still want to have your guard up, because as much as I don't want us, walking around being super paranoid and thinking the worst of everyone, I also think that it's okay, as solo travelers, it's okay to have a healthy skepticism of people and situations, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for keeping yourself safe, and you have to still have fun and still be open to people and open to meeting people if that's what you want, but also just want to proceed with caution. Especially because I think, and this is just my opinion, I think it's better to be like that, to have a healthy skepticism, than the opposite, and then you are completely oblivious and you're setting yourself up for the okie doke. You get what I'm saying here? I think that's just a safer choice as a solo traveler. If I feel uncomfortable, I'm not willing to compromise my safety, and I will put my acting skills to the test and I will make something up. Now, me personally, because I'm extra, I like to get super creative with it, and I have made up whole personalities, whole people with all these backstories, and I'm weird like that. Normally when I make something up, that is when I am not quite sure, like maybe I can't decipher the situation, I can't decipher the motive behind why someone someone is asking me this. I don't feel comfortable telling the truth. But with this, there's just so many different things that you can say. Some of the things that I've heard people say and some of the things I've said in the past and just can say, nope, I'm waiting on friends. I'm actually here for a really big work conference, a large group of us here. Just think inside your most creative part of your brain and just make something up. So the third thing that I do, again, depending on the situation, is I flip it. So this isn't something I do very often. I do this very sparingly. The only time I really do this is when I feel like someone is being a little snarky or intrusive. I feel like this person is trying to shame me in some way. What I mean by flip it is kind of like a who's asking, what's it to you anyway? It's almost like a reverse psychology kind of thing. Flip it is just something that I do when I'm feeling cheeky. Not everything deserves a response. Proceed with caution. I feel like I sound like I'm being really aggressive, but until it's happened to you, it's kind of hard to explain. That's when I'll flip it. But with that one, you kind of want to use caution because you just don't know who you're dealing with. And we all know you don't want to aggravate or agitate the wrong person, especially when you're traveling and you're in a city or even a country that is not your own. You want to just be very careful with what you're saying. All right, so how are we feeling? Are you feeling a little more prepared for your trip? I really hope you are. Before I leave you to explore this big, wide world on your own, I want to leave you with some solo travel essentials that I like to pack for my solo trips. Very first solo travel essential is this door stopper. These are really great and come in handy when you're staying at accommodation like an Airbnb where the owners have the key or other people have access to the place that you're staying at, but it can also be really great for hotels as well. What I love about this is it's cheap. It's not that expensive. I think it's probably about 15 bucks on Amazon. Second thing I love about it is that it's lightweight. I go on and on in so many videos about the importance of packing light and not packing too many heavy items that are going to weigh down your bag. And this is certainly not going to do that. This one has this grip, kind of non-slip grip at the bottom, which is also really great for hardwood floors. So obviously because of the wedge design, you stick it under the door and it's going to block the entryway of the door. And this not only is a door stopper, but it's also an alarm as well. So when pressure is applied on this part of the door stop, the alarm goes off. This one I believe has 120 decibel sound and it keeps going. And hopefully that's going to deter them, maybe attract some attention if there are other people around. And also, God forbid, if you're sleeping, it's going to wake you up too. So the second solo travel essential I have is actually another alarm, and it is a personal alarm. I got my personal alarm from a company called She's Birdie, which I actually found on Instagram. And this one is a little bit pricier than some of the other personal alarms out there. You can get some pretty cheap ones on Amazon. Another simple, easy, lightweight item that's not going to weigh your bag down. What's great about this is that it comes on a keychain. So this is actually where I put all of my keys. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. She's Birdie has a lot of really bright colors on their website. I love the bright colors because they're easy to spot in your bag. You can also attach it to your bags. So what I like to do when I'm traveling alone is I will either hold this in my hand, especially if I'm traveling at night, say I'm walking to a restaurant or walking back to my hotel or Airbnb or what have you. I also will take this keychain and attach it to my travel backpack. And if I feel like I'm starting to feel a little bit unsafe, then I will take one strap of my backpack off, cross my backpack around my body, and hold on to it like that as it's on my bag. It's got the alarm in the back and it's got some lights in the front. So not only does it sound off a crazy loud alarm, it also flashes lights. And this alarm is really loud and hopefully it's going to do a couple of things. Number one, it's going to distract and deter anyone that you feel unsafe with. The second thing that hopefully it's going to do is attract the attention of other people. So draw more attention to yourself and to the scene. And then the third thing that it's hopefully going to do is distract that person enough to where they run off. And also it's going to give you time to flee the scene and find safety. And I'll show you how this works. If you don't want to hear it, close your ears, mute the sound. All you have to do is take the top part, you guys ready? And pull. You see how loud that is? They're also super cute. You know, I love to travel in style. USB charger, phone charger, power pack, whatever you want to call it. Here's the thing, when you're traveling by yourself, your phone doesn't need to be dying. It needs to be full. It needs to be reliable. You need to be able to have a functioning phone so that you can dial an emergency phone number if you need to, so that you can keep in touch with your family and friends. Also, if you're using Google Maps to get around, you need your phone. It's very important nowadays, especially when we do so much on our phone. The one that I use is pretty bulky and old, and actually I think that this is so old, I'm not even sure they make it anymore. So I'll also go ahead and link some other portable chargers in the description box that I've heard are really good and reliable. So definitely make sure before you go on your trip that this is charged up and ready to go. And coming up in the future, I will be taking you on some of my solo trips as I am on a mission to visit all 50 states. So let me know in the comments which US city you think that I should visit. Oh, and also I almost forgot. If you are concerned about eating out alone when you're on your solo trips, definitely make sure you check out this video right here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.